Well, hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining us for this online message this weekend. If you're away out of town, hope that you're having a great time and that we'll see you again real soon. When it comes to announcements, Wednesday night we have Prayer House. Let you know about that. Wednesday night, 7 o'clock. We're back here for a time of prayer and live worship. And so it's kind of a new thing that we're doing in the fall with the live worship. So if you can join us Wednesday at 7 right here, it'd be great to see you. We are jumping into a new series on the Minor Prophets. The Minor Prophets kind of close out the Old Testament, which kind of leads us into the New Testament and the birth of Christ. So we thought it'd be a great way to kind of spend a couple months getting ready, kind of lead us into the Christmas season. I hope you don't mind me talking about Christmas. I know we still have a lot of fall to enjoy and then Thanksgiving. But we thought this would be a nice way to kind of ease our way into the Christmas story by spending some time in the Minor Prophets. Now, here's the thing. Let's just jump right into it. The book of Hosea. That's where we're going to be this weekend. You might know the story of Hosea. There are some names that I think have just been ruined. These names have such a bad reputation to them that it's hard to imagine anybody naming their little girl, their little daughter, Jezebel. All right, when you think of Jezebel, you automatically come to some assumptions. And so the name Jezebel, in some ways, it's almost a curse word. Not too many kids are being brought home with the name Jezebel. Same with the name Jeeves. I don't know how that came a character of a servant. But we think of somebody who, a butler. So not too many kids are being brought home with the name of Jeeves or Jezebel. And probably the same is true with the name Gomer. Not too many kids are named Gomer these days. Maybe the Gomer Pyle show kind of ruined Gomer too. But in the story of Hosea, Gomer does a lot of discredit to the name. Let's just talk real quick just to get everybody up to speed with what's going on with the Minor Prophets and some historical context. Hosea is a contemporary of Amos. The northern kingdom and the southern kingdom are already split in two. This takes place in the northern kingdom about the 8th century BC, 30 years before the fall to the Assyrians. It's the last year of Jeroboam's reign, which is a time of peace and prosperity. But Hosea also ministered, he prophesied as a prophet in the reign of Jeroboam's successors, some chaotic years where there were 4 kings that were assassinated. Over 30 years, Hosea actually served in the time when Israel had 7 kings. 7 kings came and went. They all ruled pretty selfishly, not really caring for the rule, and they just ignored the poor and led people into, more importantly, idolatry, which in some respects was a form of spiritual prostitution. I know that's a hard word on the ears. The unique feature about Hosea is that's the first time ever in Scripture that the use of metaphor is used in marriage to describe God's relationship with Israel. Later on, Jesus himself and Paul used the same analogy or metaphor. This is the first time we see God's people in the context of being married to God. And if you know the story of Hosea, he sadly lived out this metaphor. So let me give you a quick summary, and then we're going to dig into the text. Hosea, I found this online. I thought it was helpful. Just give us a quick. Hosea was a good man whose marriage turned tragic. After giving him 3 children, his wife Gomer left him, not for another man, but for a number of men. Hosea divorced her, according to Mosaic law. She then, it seems, became a temple prostitute in a pagan shrine. For a devout Israelite, which certainly Hosea was, this was one of the lowest things that lowest place a woman could go or do. But Hosea's life and actions were dominated by God. So Hosea eventually takes her back. He went on to say, the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God. In other words, God enables him to see in his painful domestic situation a picture of the infidelity of Israel. Israel had been joined to God, but they proved an unfaithful spouse who turned their back on God to worship false gods. The prophets referred to their idolatry as adultery. Jeremiah even said, "Have you seen what she did, that faithless one, Israel, how she went up on every high hill and under every green tree, and there played the harlot." That's from Jeremiah 3, verse 6. However, there's some good news. However, Hosea saw that his generous action in taking back Gomer mirrored the patience of a loving God who will forgive and finally restore an erring Israel. Hosea preached the mercy and tenderness of God so insistently that he has become known as the prophet of divine love. Now, the story is much richer than this real brief synopsis. So let's just dig in and kind of play the story out a little bit. This is from Hosea chapter 1. Hosea marries and has 3 children. It says here, Hosea 1. The word of the Lord came to Hosea. At this last deep dive class, we talked about what is the word of the Lord, or God's word, and how prophets spoke God's word. So here we go. The word of the Lord came to Isaiah during the reign of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and during the reign of Jeroboam. When the Lord began to speak through Hosea, he said to him, "Go, marry a promiscuous woman and have children with her. For like an adulterous wife, this land is guilty of unfaithfulness to the Lord." So he married Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. Then the Lord said to Hosea, "Call him Jezreel, because I will soon punish the house of Jehu for the massacre at Jezreel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of Israel. In that day I will break Israel's bow in the valley of Jezreel." Gomer conceived again. This time she gave birth to a daughter. Then the Lord said to Isaiah, "Call her Lo Ruhamah, which means not loved, for I will no longer show love to Israel, that I should at all forgive them. Yet I will show love to Judah," that was the other kingdom, "and I will save them, not by bow, sword, or battle, or by horses and horsemen, but I, the Lord, their God, will save them." So it was the southern kingdom of Judah. This is the northern kingdom that is falling away. After that, she weaned another son, Lo Ruhamah. Gomer had another son. Then the Lord said, "Call him," after she weaned Lohamah, the daughter, she had another son. Then the Lord said, "Call him Lo Ami," which means not my people, for you are not my people, and I am not your God. So, there's the story in a nutshell, or the beginning of it. Now, the big question Bible scholars have been kind of tossing around for literally thousands of years. Was Gomer a prostitute or promiscuous at the time of marriage? Or did this occur later on in their marriage? And the simple fact is we really don't know. We do know that Gomer and Hosea had 3 kids, which means they were together for several years if they're going to have 3 kids. So it seems to me that it was a true marriage, and that maybe they even had some times when they were happy together. Just conjecture on my part. It does seem like a literal marriage to me. Some would argue that it's just a symbolic metaphor and that this really didn't happen. Usually simile and metaphor are very, very clear to understand in the Bible, just as an aside. Yeah, so it seems like I don't believe, well, anyways, who knows, but it doesn't matter what I believe. But so Gomer and Hosea are married. She lives a very sinful life, kind of as a representation of Israel. Now, symbolic names of Hosea and Gomer's children. As if this marriage wasn't bad enough, the names that these kids are given are kind of sad. As you might know, Bible names are important. They signify something. The names of these three children are kind of, the names given these kids are almost considered like walking signs, all right? So Jezreel, just to unpack, Jezreel was the name of the royal house where King Jehu carried out a terrible massacre. This child is a walking reminder that Jehu's dynasty will be punished for this awful deed. So there's some foreboding in this name, Jezreel. The daughter, Lo Ruhumah, means not loved or not pitied. And that name, she's a walking reminder that God's kindliness for Israel is coming to an end. This means that the northern kingdom days are numbered due to its infidelity to God. Remember, Israel is split in half at this point. So this is about the northern kingdom, not Judah, but the northern kingdom. So Ruhumah means not loved, not pitied. It's a walking reminder that God's kindliness to Israel is coming to an end to the northern kingdom. The third child, Lo Ami, means not my people. Okay, and again, it's a walking reminder that Israel, the northern kingdom, will no longer be God's chosen people. The southern kingdom of Judah will continue as God's chosen people. The names signify, I don't know if you caught it, but they signify an increasing alienation in relationship between God and Israel. As these three kids are born, their names get progressively worse and worse. They kind of signify an increasing alienation. Firstborn, looming judgment against the royal family. The secondborn, God's compassion is running out. And the thirdborn, the end of Israel's covenant relationship with God. They have sinned and they've resisted God's warnings, so a terminated covenant is announced. Israel will no longer be God's people, or in the context of this metaphor, God's bride. So that's chapter 1. Chapter 2, you've all heard about divorce court. It's sad that there's TV shows that we get entertained with people's divorce. But divorce court, chapter 2 is sort of like a divine divorce court. God is there in divine divorce court. He's playing kind of multiple roles. He's the aggrieved party. He's the one who's been cheated against. He's also the prosecutor, and he's also the judge. So when you're God, you get to play all those roles. And Israel and Gomer's crimes are kind of brought to light in this court. Gomer and Israel are found guilty, and they're condemned on 3 separate counts. The first count, Israel and Gomer have chased other lovers. Okay, Gomer obviously see that painfully played out. But Israel, as a country, as the people of Israel, have also not been content. They've chased other lovers. The second count that they're guilty, Israel and Gomer have both willfully ignored their spouse who has provided for them. Okay? Verse 10 of chapter 2. Since she has not known that I was the one who gave the grain, the wine, and the oil. Here's God saying, I've been faithful to you. I've provided for you, and you have not been faithful in return. I've been faithful. I've provided. You have not. So again, pretty solid, serious condemnation of Israel. The land of Israel, the geography of Israel, totally dependent on rain. You got salt. The Mediterranean's is salt. The Dead Sea is salt. If it doesn't rain there, they're in bad shape. So when a famine came, it's because there was no rain. So God has been faithful. He's been faithful to them, but they have not been faithful. And the third thing, Israel and Gomer both suffered bad cases of memory loss. They forgot the past faithfulness. Verse 9 speaks of the reaction, all too common, when we run back to God after feeling the emptiness of promises made by false gods. The verse says, then she will say, I will come back to my first husband. So Israel and Gomer both suffered bad cases of memory loss, not remembering God's faithfulness to them in the past. So as a result, the marriage covenant between God and Israel can no longer continue. As an aside, does God chase you? Yes, I think God does chase us. In some respects, he reveals himself to us. He's pursuing us, not out of desperation, but out of his love for us. So does God chase you? Yes, but is he also willing to let you go your own way? And the answer to that is yes. God is willing to let a country and a nation go its own way. I think that's kind of where we're at in our current climate, our current culture. He is willing to hand us over to the desires, and we see that played out in silly and painful ways. When I say silly, it just, can't decide on some pretty basic things, but I digress. All right. But there's also a promise of restoration. God also says, therefore, I am going to allure her. That's Israel. I'm going to allure her. I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. There I will give her back her vineyards, and I will make the valley of Achor a door of hope. There she will respond as in the days of her youth, as in the days she came out of Egypt. In that day, declares the Lord, you will call me my husband. I will remove the names of Baal from her lips. No longer will their names be invoked. I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you in righteousness and justice, in love and compassion. I will betroth you in faithfulness, and you will acknowledge the Lord. So again, there's this promise of restoration. Now, the obvious thing is that this is interpreted on two levels. If you remember the story, Hosea's relationship with Gomer is also restored. More importantly, that God's relationship with Israel was also restored. For Israel to reconnect with her true love, God had to lead her into the desert. It was in the desert that Israel and God experienced their closest relationship. The desert was a place of purification. In the desert, Israel, as the verse says, shall respond as in the days of her youth when she came from the land of Egypt. So reference to hundreds and hundreds of years before when they first came out of the land of Egypt, and God took care of them for the 40 years in the desert. The desert is a place of purification where things are stripped away. In the desert, Israel was stripped of all of her idols, all of her comforts, and all of her distractions. And because of that, Israel will call God my husband, and he will remove from her mouth the name of the Baals, the false gods. Using the imagery of marital love and commitment, the prophet portrays God as once again entering into a covenant with Israel. He's seen as a loving husband. God will bestow his bride with gifts of loyalty and compassion. Now, the story's not over. There's one thing that was in the synopsis that I left out at the very beginning. It does say that Hosea did take his wife back. Chapter 3. Here's the reconciliation, but with a twist that you may not be aware of. The Lord said to me, "Go show your love to your wife again. Though she is loved by another man, who is an adulteress, love her." Oh, and is an adulteress. Okay. The Lord said to me, "Go show your love to your wife again. Though she is loved by another man and is an adulteress, love her as the Lord loves the Israelites." And then Hosea writes, "So I bought her for 15 shekels of silver. Then I told her, you are to live with me many days. Hosea was not only asked to take Gomer back, he actually had to pay. He had to buy back his wife. Isn't that something? If you think about the foreshadowing that we see, Jesus, in some respects, buys us back. There's a cost involved in reconciliation. And Hosea literally not just takes his wife back, but there's an expense, there's a sacrifice that he makes to buy her back. Gomer seemed to be a slave, probably in the temple of Baal. We don't know exactly, but her freedom, it seems, had to be purchased. It was to bring her back into relationship with Hosea, her husband. A relationship and living together was the goal. Okay, so again, I think it's a pretty rich story. Now, the other thing we want to mention here is not to forget the kids. The names of Hosea's kids were also changed. Jezreel, the meaning is changed from place of massacre and doom to fertile breadbasket, or I will sow, okay, or I will reap. Sow is planting, I guess. So, but it's a good thing. It's a fertile breadbasket. So Jezreel was named from a place that was changed from massacre and doom and gloom and badness to a place that's good. The daughter Lo Rahama, originally meant not pitied, not loved. That name is changed to pitied or loved. And then Lo Ami, the third child, not my people, was changed to you are my people. And Israel, like in a marriage ceremony, will respond, you are my God. So even the names of the kids are changed from names of alienation to names of hope. There are some questions that I think are worthy of entertaining. If you were Hosea, how would you feel about Gomer? Okay, boy, to be a prophet, that's a hard job description. But God asked Hosea to live out a painful job description. The role of the prophet, especially him, to have that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, it's a transgression. It's a turning of the back. I can't remember the word, but it would come to me. It's just a bad situation that Hosea is asked to enter into or to live out. And then, how would you feel if you were Hosea? How would you feel about Gomer? And then, a little more practical is who do you need to forgive? Has somebody really hurt you? Has somebody really just left you? And it's like a traitor, really. Maybe that's the word I'm thinking about, a traitor. Who do you need to forgive? And there might be a name that pops right into your head, and maybe it's something you need to contemplate. The next thing I think, if you've been around here long enough, you've heard me say this a number of times, you might be able to finish this statement or finish this thought for me. The most important thing about you is... If you've been around, you know that we'd answer that question is the most important thing about you is what you think about God. Okay? That defines you, and it becomes your filter and your grid for how you interpret life. So, what does this story show you about God? What does this story show you about God? And then how does this apply to your life today? Okay? You can never balance the scales with God. Okay? Your good works are never going to balance the scales. And the truth is, others cannot balance the scales with you. Now, whether they cannot balance the scales or they will not balance the scales, the truth is they are unable to balance the scales because no one can live perfectly. People are going to hurt you. People are going to offend you. People are going to be traitorous to you. How we want to live a life that's fair, but that's just not reality. Living in a sinful world. This is not just a story about God's faithfulness. It's a story of forgiveness. And it would be easy for all of us to say, well, I would never be like Gomer. But the fact is, we already are. We are a people with divided attention. We are a people with divided allegiance. We are a people who often forget the faithfulness of God. We are a people whose eyes are always wandering. We are a people whose heart is always trying to get filled with something else. And you might not live a life as drastic as Gomer in the physical, but in your heart and in the spiritual, if we're not careful, we all can easily become a Gomer. And again, it shows us an aspect of God's faithfulness, His mercy, His love. So it is a story of faithfulness, but maybe more so it's a story of forgiveness. And if God can forgive Gomer, if Hosea can forgive Gomer and enter into a relationship with her again, then we need to have a bigger picture of God's grace for us, and then also being able to extend that grace to others in return. So, all right. Well, thank you again for hanging with us. We hope to see you again real soon. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.